The email went out at 9 in the morning, and I scanned the third line 4 times before it landed. Please join me in welcoming our new head of client strategy. A name I didn't know. The role I'd been promised. I set the coffee down. My hand wasn't shaking, and that surprised me more than the email did. 2 years earlier, she had told me it was already moving upstairs, and I had believed her the way you believe a manager who has never once been wrong about you before. I was the person clients asked for by name. 6 years on the accounts team, and somewhere in year 3, I stopped being the guy who worked the accounts and became the reason 3 of the biggest ones stayed. I knew which of their people were about to quit before their own bosses did. That kind of thing doesn't show up in a performance review. It shows up when a contract renews without a single call to procurement. My boss saw it. Or she saw enough of it to use it. She was the kind of leader people call magnetic, and I mean that as a fact, not a compliment. In a room with her own boss, she'd point across the table and say my name like she was showing off something she had built. That retention number, that's all him. I believed every word because the words were true. What I didn't get yet was that she could mean all of it and still not be building anything. Within a year, the promotion she kept describing had a shape, a title, almost a start date, and not one piece of it existed anywhere but in the room. Here is how the pattern ran, and it ran clean enough that I didn't see it as a pattern for a long time. Every quarter there was a reason the timing wasn't right. In the spring, it was the reorg. Then it was the budget freeze that everyone upstairs swore was temporary. Then it was a new senior vice president who needed a quarter to get the lay of the land before any titles moved. Each reason was real. Each reason was checkable. That is what made them work on me. And between the reasons, there was always the warmth. She'd pull me into the big client reviews, the ones with the executives in the room, and hand me the hardest part to present. Because, she said, they needed to see me at that level. After everyone, she'd find me in the hall and tell me the room had noticed. They're building the case for you, she'd say. It's basically moving upstairs already. Always upstairs, always moving. Never a document I could actually see. So I did what people like me do. I gave her more reasons. I took the account nobody wanted, the one that had already fired 2 agencies, and turned it around in 5 months. I trained the 2 new hires she didn't have time for. I ran a client summit over a long weekend and expensed nothing, because I told myself that asking for the reimbursement would look small next to what I was about to get. Then, in the fall, it finally moved. She called me into a room and told me it was done. Not almost. Done. She said she had walked my case into the leadership offsite herself, that the head count was approved, that all that was left was the formal part. There was a hold on my calendar the next week, and she had titled it, in that way of hers, your next chapter. I told my wife. I told my father, who had never once in his life been promoted into anything. For 9 days, I felt like a man standing on solid ground. That was the false victory. The ground was already opening, and it opened by email. At 9 in the morning, with a stranger's name where mine should have been. Anger came later than you would think. What hit me first was embarrassment, and it had a physical location. It sat right at the top of my chest, the same spot that used to tighten before a presentation I wasn't ready for. I kept the email open on my second monitor all morning and answered other messages around it, as if staying busy next to it could make it mean something other than what it plainly said. Then I did the thing people do. I built her defense for her. Maybe the outside hire had a background I didn't. Maybe it wasn't even her call. Maybe it came down from above and she had fought it and lost. I actually caught myself feeling sorry for her. Sorry for the person who had spent 2 years spending my patience. I told myself I was only being fair. That lasted about 1 sentence. I was still trying to keep her the good person, because that was easier than where the other version led. And under all the excuses was the question I couldn't switch off. What if I had gotten the whole thing wrong? What if building the case had only ever been a manager being kind to someone she liked, and I had inflated it into a promise because I needed one to be true? The fear that kept me up was worse than anything she had done. It was that I might have invented the whole promise myself. I stopped eating lunch with the team. I told them I had calls. I didn't have calls. I sat in my car in the parking garage with the seat back and the engine off. I tried to work out whether I was a person who had been robbed or a person who had been foolish. I couldn't decide. For about a week, I just didn't decide anything at all. I can see now that not deciding was the decision. I couldn't see it then. It broke over something small, a routine one-on-one, the kind she scheduled every quarter to talk through my growth, using the same warm language she had leaned on for 2 years. I sat across from her and watched her do the warm thing with her face, and nothing in me moved the way it used to. She told me the role had needed someone client-facing from outside to signal change. My time was coming, she said. That same line again. Then came the phrase I had started keeping a private count of. Next cycle. I heard it land in the exact place all the other cycles had landed, which was nowhere. I didn't argue. That is the part I'm almost proud of. I didn't make my case one more time, because I had finally understood that making my case to her was the whole trap. It landed on me then, that she had never once been building a case for me. She just liked watching me build one. Every time I asked, I handed her another quarter of my patience in exchange for another sentence about upstairs. So I stopped asking. Out loud I said, understood. Thanks for the honesty. Somewhere quieter and colder, something had already stood up and started looking for the door. The truth came from a man who had already left. He'd been a director on the hiring side before he took a job somewhere saner, and we had stayed in loose touch the way you do. I asked him for coffee, honestly just to feel like a professional again. Near the end, I described what had happened, careful, not naming her, and he stopped me halfway through. He said the head of client strategy role had gone out to an external recruiter in the spring. The spring. 6 months before she called me into that room and told me it was done. I started to tell him he must have the dates confused. I didn't finish the sentence. He had seen the requisition himself because it briefly routed through his old team on its way out. There had never been a head count for an internal promotion. There had never been a case walked into any off-site. The thing she told me was sitting in its formal part had, at that same moment, been open on a recruiter's desk with a salary band attached and my name nowhere on it. I remember the cup going lukewarm in my hand while he talked. I remember thinking, with a strange flat clarity, that at least I had not made it up. The promise had been real. Someone kept making it to me, right up to the morning it wasn't there. And the second I knew that, the embarrassment turned into something I could finally use. I stopped trying to be chosen and started counting what I was already holding. It turned out to be more than I had let myself believe. 3 of the firm's 10 largest accounts renewed on relationships that lived in my phone, not in any system. 2 of them had my personal cell and had used it at 11 at night. So I spent one Sunday building a single page. It looked like an inventory. Left column, the accounts. Middle column, the revenue attached to each one. Right column, one cold sentence about what would walk out the door with me if I ever stopped holding that account. I did not exaggerate a number anywhere on it. I didn't need to. The real ones were bad enough for the company to feel. Then I did the part that had frightened me for 2 years. I answered one of the recruiter emails I had been deleting. I took the calls. Within a month, I had a real offer, on real letterhead, with the title I had been promised and a number sitting above it. And here is where I did the thing she never planned for. I didn't resign. I didn't threaten anyone. I asked for 30 minutes with her boss, the senior vice president 2 levels up, and I brought the page. I told her I loved the work and wanted to stay. Then I laid the map on the table and let the numbers do their work. I said, plainly, that I had another offer and that I wasn't there to negotiate my feelings. I was there to talk about risk. Whose risk? Theirs. She studied the page twice. Then she closed the folder and told me she needed to take this through the right channels and that she would come back to me the following week. She didn't say yes, and she didn't say no. She just left the door open a crack, with a whole weekend sitting on the far side of it. I drove home unable to tell whether I had just made the smartest move of my career or handed my last piece of leverage to a stranger who could now manage me out slowly, on her own schedule. The offer in my inbox had a clock running on it. 4 days went by. I checked my phone like it owed me money. On the 5th day, she called me herself. She never mentioned my boss once. She asked me what I thought the role should be called. If you're the one who keeps getting told your time is coming, let me say the part I needed someone to say to me. You are not naive for having believed it. Wanting the thing you were promised is not a character flaw. The people who dangle promotions are good at it, precisely because the promise is shaped exactly like something a decent, hardworking person would trust. 2 years taught me one real thing about leverage. I used to picture it as a threat, as being willing to blow the whole table up, and since I am not built that way, I decided I didn't have any. That was the mistake. Leverage is only the honest answer to one question. What actually happens to them if you stop? Most of us never run that number, because running it feels like arrogance. I ran mine for the first time on a Sunday night at my own kitchen table, and I felt a little sick doing it. So we go around holding real power and calling ourselves lucky just to be in the room. The warmth was never the currency, though it felt like it, because warmth is what people spend when they don't intend to spend anything else. What actually moved my situation was mechanical and a little cold. I put the cost of losing me in front of someone who thinks in costs, and I let the number talk. And you have to take it to the level where the decision actually lives. I spent 2 years negotiating with the one person whose entire job was to keep me negotiating. The promotion was never hers to give. It was only ever hers to postpone. So this is what I would build if I could go back, starting the first week instead of the 3rd year. First, write your own map now, before you need it. 1 page. Every account, project, or piece of institutional memory that would genuinely wobble if you walked out on a Friday. Put the honest number or the honest consequence next to each line. Deflate it, if anything, because a conservative number you can defend beats a big one you can't. Second, find out where the decision actually lives. Not who delivers the news to you, but who signs off on the head count and the salary band. If you don't know, that is your first sign you have been talking to the wrong person for months. Third, get a real outside number. You don't have to want the other job. You have to know your price, because you cannot negotiate a value you have never once seen quoted. One genuine offer changes how you sit in every conversation after it, including the ones where you never mention it. Fourth, take it up, not sideways. Ask for the meeting one level above the person who keeps postponing you. Bring the page and leave the grievance at home. Talk about risk, because executives are strangely unmoved by fairness and very moved by risk. You don't have to become ruthless to do any of this. You just have to stop confusing being appreciated with being paid. I got the role. New title, the number I had been worth for 2 years, a team of my own. I won't pretend it fixed everything. I stayed at the same company. I still walk past her office. And something that used to sit between us, some easy trust, is just gone now. And it isn't coming back. That is the cost of winning this way. And nobody prints it on the offer letter. Some mornings the new title feels smaller than the quiet in the hallway when we pass each other and both pretend to check our phones. But I make my decisions from a different place now. I know what I'm holding. I check what I'm worth before I need to, instead of after. So look at the promise you're still standing under, the one that's always one cycle away. Ask yourself the only question that ever mattered for me. If you knew, for certain, that it was never coming, what would you do Monday morning? Sit with that one for a second. Then tell me in the comments how long you've been waiting. Because I'd bet you're not the only one holding a chapter that was never being written.